It's often easy to see discussion after discussion at conferences heavily focused on the opportunity of technology being applied in healthcare, often through the lens of big systems and big infrastructure. But when we convene, are these solely the things that we should be focusing on? I am delighted to be here with two giants in the dissemination of innovation and technology, pun intended. And today I have Shreya from Giant, serial entrepreneur, founder and CEO of Giant Healthcare, and Shafi Ahmed, who I've been trying to think about how to introduce this man for about an hour early today. Serial entrepreneur, surgeon, professor, and CEO of a tech company as well. So really great to have you both here to have a big discussion about big discussions, really.
Excellent. Thank you, Liam. We're delighted to be here and we appreciate you sharing the conversation with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Nim, and good to be here too.
Fantastic. So Barry, obviously, in terms of Giant, it's coming up in just over a month now, and you and your team and Shafi as the chair of Giant are going to be working furiously to get the best possible agenda. I'm really interested from you around how you approach and pull together something that is sort of fresh and exciting, well, year on year, really.
Excellent. Liam, thank you very much. So GIANT is an acronym. It's about global innovation and new technology. And we exist to serve the UK health sector only. So on the buy side, so to speak, it's everybody on the NHS commissioning and technology procurement side. On the sell side, so to speak, it's businesses from around the world, big global companies like Medtronics and Olympus, all the way down to tiny, tiny startups right out of universities and a lot of SMEs who are making new technologies and innovations to market into the UK health sector. And what's more important for us than practically anything else is us being the most valuable platform for the providers of healthcare in the UK to learn about new technologies, to be exposed to innovation, and to understand, if you will, where the world is going in that space. But one of the biggest challenges for us is to be fresh. And we don't want to be like all of the other conferences that you see all over the UK and all over Europe and all over the world, which are just showcasing the so-called shiny new stuff, all the bright new sparkly equipment. That's all well and good. And there's a big need for it. But there's another theme that we're quite keen to champion. And that is for a long, long time going forward, for decades going forward, healthcare will be delivered by people. Maybe it will be delivered by people forever. So technology can help them. But the challenge is, how do you make the role of the healthcare worker, the doctor, the nurse, the hospital manager, the community healthcare provider, how can you make technology to make their life better? So that's something we're very keen to develop. Not, of course, denying at all what has been accomplished in all these other areas of tech. And of course, not at all denying the capability of healthcare workers right now. But these are some important themes for us, and we want to be
Yeah,
absolutely at the forefront of all of this.
absolutely. Shafi, you're a clinician and you're a technologist. You're also a man who's probably been to many conferences over the years and spoken at them as well. In your mind, what's a good conversation? What excites you when you're going to these talks?
Yeah, you're right. I have been to a number over the many years. I just came from one which was interesting in the EU, in Slovakia, yesterday in Bratislava, run by the European Alliance for Innovation, looking at tech and innovation across different sectors, including healthcare. So what excites me when I go to these conferences, listen to people, is a genuine enthusiasm of technology innovation having a bigger role in healthcare to improve access, to improve standards, to improve quality, for example. So I think a lot of people from different verticals in the same space
Mm.
want to support the evolution of healthcare globally. That's what's exciting. Also, seeing case examples where people have used some innovation, not necessarily technology, it's that changing process, redesigning a patient interaction, for example, improving efficiency, as well as maybe in technology, solving some of healthcare's most difficult challenges. So that's really exciting. The noise, the conversation, the enthusiasm, particularly we see in the Giant Health event every year.
Mm.
And it's an amazing place to be where the drivers are there, the right people, the right conversations are happening. So I'm generally excited. I think COVID allowed us to rethink innovation, to allow us to adapt very quickly to new ideas, which wasn't possible before. Also, I'm seeing clinicians more engaged in new ideas. Healthcare workers, particularly doctors,
Mm.
have been slow and resistant to change. So think about new ideas or new models of care. But actually, we've reset that now where more people are innovative, more people redesigning clinical pathways, and we're seeing it sticking, i.e., being used in clinical practice with more trials, more data coming out. So if you look at 10 years ago, the whole world of innovation technology in healthcare was very much early. Its infancy, now matured through COVID, through examples, through companies coming to space, through NHS and the healthcare systems adopting those new ideas. So I think we moved a long way over the last 5, 6 years. And I think it's exciting what might come the next 5 or 10 years. So, so yes, I just see more and more traction, more and more ideas gain a foothold into our NHS as a clinician. That's obviously very beneficial. But ultimately, it's about the patient. I'm seeing patients engage more, and also I'm seeing technology improve their lives in terms of access, quality, and also the user journey. The UX, UI that we talk about computing now language, we're now seeing it replicated in terms of patients. And that's the most important part that I see that's really exciting.
To follow up on this, I think obviously behind the scenes, when we're talking to people in the system, when we're talking some of the challenges, I think there is, particularly within a number of communities around the NHS who are trying to bring on innovation, what we can often see is a degree of frustration. Obviously, we've got financial circumstances, we've got huge challenges at the moment. I wonder whether the conversation that we're seeing, I have been going to regular conferences over the last couple of years where I keep seeing that there's a lot dominated by the immediate challenges, particularly that is maybe meaning that some of the bigger, bolder, more exciting leaps that we're talking about aren't necessarily connecting to the system. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts around that.
I think you're right there, actually, Liam. We work in silos. We have done for a long time. As what we see, let's take example the NHS. We do see pockets of innovation where one institution, one university, one hospital implements innovation. But what we're not seeing sometimes is that scaling across a healthcare system. That's been true for a long time. Now, having said that, new reconfiguration of the integrated care systems, the integrated care boards, for example, the academic health science network, some of the kind of the NHS entrepreneur program, the digital academies, we are seeing now perhaps slightly more translation of those ideas across parts of the NHS. I'm hoping it'll get better. One of the problems I've seen before is you have an idea which you implement in a hospital. Another hospital wants to implement the same thing,
Mm.
and they always have to go and redesign the ethical process, the governance, the trials, the data, almost from fresh. And that puts you back. I'd love to see a system where actually an idea that's adopted in one place can be fostered and engineered to be used across the health system very quickly. We are seeing a change. We are seeing more of that, Liam,
Mm.
but not as quickly as I'd imagined 3 or 4 years ago. So there's still work to be done. Hopefully, this new reconfiguration, we've seen many of those, of course, over the last 20, 30 years. I'm
Yeah.
hoping the ISP, the IS, could be a conduit for that kind of expansion of those ideas across the system.
Mm. I it's a really good point. I think like there has always been a challenge around proliferation. So my first organization I built up in the 2010s was about bringing together clinical commissioning groups in medicines optimization and trying to get someone in the north of England to talk to someone in Cornwall and work together about a thing that they were doing when they never would have spoken before. And I suppose a challenge sometimes to the system is we don't have amazing mechanisms for sort of lateral proliferation. It can be really hard to see that. And the word reinventing the wheel gets
Yes,
used so much.
yes. No, it's a really good point, Liam. And when I launched Giant Health, Shafi and I were, of course, saying to ourselves, what are the main mechanisms to overcome these silos which exist in individual hospitals and individual local healthcare systems, as well as the silos that exist nationally? And of course, a major contributor to overcoming them are the face to face gatherings. And you might have said, well, yes, but there have been loads of events around the country, local, regional, national events that have been going for decades, which bring people together. But I certainly feel like there's still a lot more room for that. And Every year, people who come to our event, the Giant Health event, say to us, look, there's just still not enough conversation. And
Mm,
exactly as you said, Liam, between maybe people running a hospital in the northeast of England and people running hospitals in the southwest. And this is compounded by the fact that, of course, the political pendulum swings back and forth, and economic pendulums swing back and forth, and general cultural and national social sentiment swings back and forth between centralization and then decentralization and then back again. And there's no easy answer. And, we hear about the experiments in other countries about centralized planning versus decentralized planning. And there's certainly no easy answer, but we are absolutely committed to the view that there's endless need for people to come together face to face and talk about all these technologies, all these innovations. That's why, for example, we have the ICB Congress within the Giant Health event this year, because the ICS ICB program is itself still very new, isn't it?
yeah, absolutely. And trying to work out what it needs to work out to get to the thing that it needs to be. Like we have sequential steps where we've had the Hewitt review, we've had so many different elements that are now starting to look and say, okay, we've gone a bit this far, we need to go that far. And actually, in terms of digital, I like the CIOs and the system leaders that I speak to are all looking at each other saying, well, how far should we be going? Should we be consolidating in local areas, or should we be giving more freedom, based on what NHS England's saying? So I think there's so many gaps at the moment that getting
Yeah.
together and talking can kind of fill.
Yeah.
Barry, can I pick up on your point around decentralization? Because I think when we first met, we had a big discussion around the power of decentralization. And you've spoken quite passionately in our discussions around empowering the healthcare worker and the doctor and the nurse and hospital manager. I'd love to hear your views around, what in the conversation you really want to provoke when you're curating your agenda around getting these people to be part of that discussion and empowered in the decisions that are made by some of the people who come along.
Sure. No, it's a great theme. And there's a bunch of paradoxes within that theme, aren't there? Naturally, planning can be more efficient. Central procurement can be very economically effective. And yet only at the sharp end, so to speak. It's only within the clinical patient relationship that you understand exactly what the needs are of your patients, of your community, of your region. And those are different all across the country, aren't they? And the irony is, of course, with technology, like today, for example, we had a video recording with a business that does remote patient monitoring. And the theme of hospital at home, remote patient monitoring, virtual ward, all these themes are developing quite rapidly, aren't they?
Mm,
And the general concept of, well, look, we have waiting list problems, we have hospital bed capacity problems. What can we do to get patients home quicker? Patients are happier at home, aren't they? They're mentally more at ease. Maybe that facilitates physical rehabilitation. So all these themes coming together. But if you have 100 hospital groups nationwide making their own decisions, and if you have the need for any technology provider to have to knock on 100 hospitals separately
mm,
nationwide, then innovation is severely stifled because it's extremely difficult unless you're a global company to have a sales force that can knock on 100 hospitals nationwide and say, hi, you should buy our product. So, like I said, I think
mm,
there's almost some kind of permanent structural edges here. But the conversation we want to have is the conversation just about this topic. And there's no answer. There's no absolutely obvious right or wrong. But we do have to figure out how do we reconcile economic benefits and likelihood of accelerating the adoption of innovation, which come from central decision making,
mm,
with the need at the local level to make sure that you're capturing patient information, you're acknowledging the needs of local clinicians, the needs of regional health authorities, and this type of thing.
mm. And Shafi, obviously you're many things, but as a clinician first and foremost, who maybe didn't need to have technology put in your hands because you went out and grabbed it with both hands, but for your peers, for a clinician who may not necessarily be taking that immediate step to go out and become a technologist, what's the kind of technology, what are the kind of things that you want to see in their hands so they can do the absolute most and be empowered with technology?
So I think anything that makes their life easy. So if you look at automation,
Mm,
and if you look at the clinical work that a junior doctor might do, we know from previous studies that 70% of the workload of a junior doctor is paperwork,
Wow.
blood tests, x-rays, imaging, compiling patient documents, for example. Clearly, that is not what they're trained for. And that's why they get disillusioned. And that's why we're losing a workforce. I think using their skills as doctors, as nurses, and making a lot of the jobs they do easier with AI, maybe with automation, with data that's driven by electronic health record, so things are captured, etc. That is the first thing that I would make sense. Would make sense to allow those clinicians to do their jobs they're trained. That's the first thing. And also remember, we need a smart workforce. Yeah. And the new generation of doctors that are coming through are digital natives. They understand innovation, they understand technology. They're
Mm.
using social media, they're using computers, they live and breathe those ideas. So, how do we get the best out of them in a traditional model of care, traditional model of education that's not digital at all? So, we need to bring all these ideas to get the best out of the new doctors, to use them to the best capacity, allow them to innovate. For example, today I was Imperial with Barry teaching on the surgical design, innovation and technology BSc program that all Imperial College students do. And we introduced a course called Imperial X and Bart's X. I did at Bart's a few years ago. And what we do with the students here, we get them to be taught by business designers, developers, UI UX teams, coders, people outside the industry that are doctors, they're in IBM consulting, for example, or have us links, a creative ad agency, to showcase what else can be achieved, what else can they do, and who else impacts other industries,
Mm.
healthcare. I think bringing those other skills into the equation, allow them to be doctors for much longer. We might retain more people. We might use their skills, and they may not feel they're just become obsolete fairly quickly. So it's not about technology.
Mm.
It's understanding their requirements, understanding how do we bring the best out of them and retain them as long as possible to ensure the workforce problem is managed, and also to allow them to work more efficiently. So I think those are the key elements. Quite simple. They're not
Yeah.
high tech solutions. These simple things that have more traction. Of course, the AI, the XR technologies, the wearable sensors, they're all coming in,
Mm.
and they will be equipped with far more skills and far more devices and technology that will allow them to look after the patient better in the future. So I think those are the key things I think are
Mm.
necessary today. And almost without them, we won't be able to deliver healthcare service.
I just wanted to add to Shafi's point. I'm not sure of the absolute global evidence, but it's probably not far fetched to say that technology in the past decade or two has removed the clinician from the patient. You always hear about the challenge, even at the primary care level, of the patient talking to the GP and the GP looking at their computer and typing notes into the computer instead of actually engaging as directly as they perhaps could historically. And exactly like you said, Shafi, the direction that technology is going is, on the one hand, improvement in all basic elements of what healthcare requires, diagnosis and treatment, but also in figuring out how to enable the clinician to get back to the personal relationship with the patient instead of the clinician having to stare at the computer and type,
Yeah.
instead of continuing the discussion with the patient. And I suppose an extension of these challenges that technology brings is, I have heard from many junior doctors who say, well, look, the printer in our hospital ward hasn't been working for the past, whatever, 4 weeks. And so ironically, we are introducing amazing, revolutionary new technology left, right, and center, but
Mm.
we're not necessarily getting it right with basics.
Yeah. To draw upon a couple of those points, a lot of what I do is service-led experiments. We're often in primary and community working with individual teams. And the second I step in the room, their history, their hard sort of, scarred history of working with IT. As soon as I go and working with digital, they all kind of go, oh, and they get defensive and they kind of, and I know that I have to basically spend a little bit of time to assure them that we're thinking about doing something differently. But some of my moments that have inspired me about the potential of technology the most is in what I like to call Swiss Army knives. Like, I think there's a lot of technology that's like rocket science, and it's like, here's this thing and it's so complicated. You just got to fill it in, but we're not going to explain how it works because it's really, really complicated. And there's a lot of these new technologies coming through that could be perceived in that way. But I love technologies that gives them tools or Lego blocks where they can do stuff. And I was working with a particular community provider during the pandemic and just after. And basically, it was very much about them deciding where they wanted to go, what they wanted to solve, and what they wanted to do. And if I'm entirely honest, I didn't really do a lot. I just held a space and gave them some coaching, mentoring, and we selected the right tools that they could use, which was
Yeah.
predominantly Microsoft 365 and other things. And I had these moments where I had a physiotherapist or a speech and language therapist and come back and say, guess what we've done? Look of pride. They were empowered. They had that look and they like,
Nice.
got to show you this thing. And there was one particular one with a really complex service, the kind of service where you go, where on earth do we begin? And the team came back and they said, we've got this person, really severe needs. They're in a independent living home. You know, they've got physical and learning disabilities and
Yep.
moving and handling was creating a lot of pain. And they said, we use this and we totally reimagined how we could make this different for that person. And so we created a load of videos that he could show to his carer. It was on his iPad. It was available. They could send stuff back. And he's like overjoyed. He's showing everyone his video. And I thought,
Nice.
you would never prioritize and plan for that. But that is exactly the place where humanity can come through with digital from the clinician being empowered to the person who's receiving care. And so for me, I think, you know, there's to add on to that final point that Shafi made, being able to help people to see what this can be for them is so exciting. And I'd like to see more opportunities with technology where we can give them more Swiss Army knife.
100%. This building blocks concept sounds quite unusual, in fact, compared to, I guess, more of a top down, here's this new technology, here's what it does, you will use it.
Love your Swiss Army analogy, which I think is a great example of how we need to approach these ideas.
Yeah.
I think we all kind of have the sense of frustration, also the sense of wonder and optimism in kind of in the similar amounts, which I think is an interesting place to be, Liam.
So, Shafi, when you're in the operating theater, is it mainly Swiss Army knives that you're using?
well, some people who've seen my operations have made that comment before. However, some may think that I can actually do an operation from skin to skin without the swim up knife.
Everyone must
I've
be
not tried the
wondering why the
sauna.
Phillips screwdriver's out though, right?
Orthopedics, I'm not quite an orthopedic surgeon. So we actually consider ourselves not a surgeon, but as kind of artists. That's kind of who we are. You know, we create art.
Absolutely.
We take joy in what we do, for example. Yes, so I prefer to be known as an artist rather than someone who wields a Swiss Army knife.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. But actually, artists with a Swiss Army knife can let their creativity come through in
True,
so many different
true,
ways, right?
true.
We want artists to build something beautiful, right? In terms of the session, I'm really looking forward to coming to Giant. And just to say both, I am really grateful that you've given me a platform for the event. And just to say, I've got the wonderful Malta Gerhol, Catherine Ward, and also Masood Ahmed, who are going to be joining me on a panel to talk in the ICB
Excellent.
conference.
Oh, Liam, this is
Um,
fabulous, and we're really, really glad and looking forward to you coming on stage. And I don't want to sound too cheesy, but then as American, maybe I'm allowed to say cheesy things. The hallmark of Giant is bringing absolutely outstanding people on stage who have big, important ideas and deep understanding, and sharing that with the audiences who obviously are quite thirsty for
Mm.
these levels of expertise and insight and credibility. So, for reasons like that, we're really glad that you're coming on board. Could you talk a little bit more about your thinking regarding your panel and some of the ideas revolving around that?
Yeah, sure. So obviously we're in part of the ICB conference on the 5th, and I suppose I would call it a pirate panel per se. And what I'd like to do is to come and maybe point at some maybe slightly more taboo topics where we can kind of consider where we are on the scale around innovation. So the area that I really want to talk about is around risk. Right at the core is our perception of risk in the system. And given the huge challenges that we're facing, the workforce challenges, the demand, the complexity of demand challenges, the classic just supply demand ratio and financial challenges as well.
Yes.
Whether we are right now in something that is akin to a wartime footing, that we've got such a huge challenge to solve. And I suppose, given the huge promise that technology brings, I'm going to be asking the panel, are we building enough of an appetite to take big leaps, to take a risk and to be able to step up to the challenges that we're facing. I think particularly given, I work very closely with a number of health tech companies, and I think the reality that we're all talking quite quietly about is that the confidence, particularly by investors in the NHS, is very low. And when often they talk about this, it's that they see it as being very difficult to get in, that maybe the money is a little bit lower, and that sometimes they can see that there's a number of challenges in terms of getting into the UK. And I think at the core of this, there is a discussion around risk, aversion of risk, how much evidence do we need, and who's prepared to take a risk, and how do we integrate this into our integrating systems? So I'm looking forward to discussion. I can't wait to see what my
Nice.
fantastic panelists are going to be talking about.
Can I just come back for 1 minute, Liam, on that
Yeah.
purpose? So we're very excited to be coming. Thank you for coming and supporting Giant. We need people like you to share your experiences, your enthusiasm, etc. So thank you so much from the Giant team. But one point to make, we all want this technology to succeed, to scale,
Mm.
not just in the UK, but globally.
Mm.
But a word of caution. I've always been an advocate of quick scale, getting as many people to use the technology to improve their lives and
Mm.
also to improve the lives of the clinicians. A few examples. First of all, just seen Babylon, a company that was valued at 4 billion 2 years ago, with the promise of putting an app in everybody's hands to improve healthcare. They issued the bankruptcy notice about a month ago. Livongo and Teladoc bought Livongo,
Mm.
a company in the US with the highest acquisition ever in digital health, where they've lost 14, 20 billion in acquisition within 18 months. We've seen other companies
Mm.
also lose their valuation. Digital therapeutics come back, Pear Therapeutics, using digital therapeutics to help mental health. Again, valuation 2 billion 2 years ago, and now back to zero and bankruptcy.
Mm.
We've seen the attempt at a behemoth, Amazon, Berkshire Hathaway, and also JP Morgan with Haven kind of disrupt healthcare. Again, failed. So here's my question
Mm.
to you. Are we ready for scale? Are we needing to pin back those ideas and have a bit slow growth? And maybe not as break fast, break hard as a paper mantra, be more considered, more deliberate, at the same time, putting in change. So I'm now actually almost reversing some of my enthusiasm
Mm.
for scale very quickly. So actually, maybe we'd go a little bit slower, but with kind of more precision and a more considered outlook. So again, so I'll just put that out to the
Yeah.
audience.
Mm. And
That's a
actually, I
fabulous
think
point.
it's exactly the kind of conversation that we have, because there is a scale where if it's too much risk,
Yeah.
then we could create all kinds of havoc. If we're too conservative, then is technology going to be playing the role fast enough in addressing the challenges? Because this is a digital revolution we're going through. And so I think talking about the different kinds of risk, the risk of scaling something that's hugely unproven is one, but actually the risk of trying things safely. And, if you read, for example, the work of Mariana Mazzucato and,
Yeah.
the entrepreneurial state, and trying to find ways to underpin risk that benefits everybody, and that we have these in parallel. We need to have a number of things considered, but actually, if we can't create fertile ground, we can't grow anything. And if people feel the ground is arid, then can we grow anything? And so I absolutely agree that there is a dichotomy of competing challenges here. And I think that's the
Mm.
real conversation we need to be bringing out and really
Yeah.
exposing, to say, how do we not just do this or this? How do we find a way to do a bit of both so we can get ourselves in the best possible situation?
Mm.
So linking an analogy, you mentioned the Swiss Army knife. I'm going to mention Goldilocks and the Three Bears.
Yeah.
What we need is that porridge that's just right.
Not too
Yeah.
hot.
Now we scale very quickly, but considered with data and ensure that we're safe
Mm.
and credible and the patients buy into that idea.
Absolutely. And often everyone gets excited about the concept of revolution and evolutionary change. And, we've gone through the
Mm.
industrial revolution, which came after the agricultural revolution. And now we're in the IT revolution. But it certainly is risky. And obviously, the size of recent, very large global failures, like you highlighted, Shafi, are examples of that.
Mm.
In a way, though, if we could have revolutions inside an evolution, if we could have slow, cautious, safe evolution in healthcare
Mm.
regarding adoption of technology, but the revolutions inside there that are small and safe, like you said, Liam, which enable new technologies and innovations to be tested, but not with the expectation that, okay, this new thing is working in this one, whatever, ICB, let's
Mm.
immediately roll it out nationwide, because it's not going to work, is it?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, great theme. Really looking forward to your panel, Liam. Thank you very
Me
much.
too. And we've got a real mix of people. So I think we're going to get some very interesting
Yes.
views.
Yeah. Can
Fantastic.
I just make a declaration regarding conflict of interest? I'm not a shareholder in Swiss Army Knife.
Although maybe we should be after talking about it so much, right?
If anybody out there works for Swiss Army Knife Incorporated, we welcome
Yeah.
sponsorship applications.
And it's
And I'm
handled
not
safely,
related
right?
to Goldilocks in any shape or form or the bear.
So there's no porridge sponsorship. And also, like Barry, you and me maybe need to be a bit more careful with the knives. So I think maybe we can just leave it to Shafi as well. You know, he's the man who knows how to handle a knife in this room today.
Absolutely. Liam,
Gentlemen,
thank you. Shafi, thank you.
yeah,
Thank you so
thank
much.
you so much for joining this discussion.
Excellent. Thank you, Shafi. Thank you, Liam. Hope everybody listening can join us on the 4th and 5th of December at the Giant Health event, www.giant.health.